Becky turned 18 and the news of her pregnancy fell upon the house like a heavy storm, the supermarket worker by day transformed into a socialite by night. She folded the outfit carefully, slid it into her bag, and closed the door. "I've been eating here for months, and now I discovered you people put cockroaches in your food." Everything went smoothly until the final store, where her luck betrayed her. They are aware of her scheme of wearing items and returning them. Her secret life had been exposed. Borrow it to fake it. Becky had always been the apple of her mother's eye, the little girl who brought laughter into a modest home that knew struggle more than plenty. Her mother, a strong woman who had raised her alone after Becky's father abandoned them before her birth, worked herself to the bone so that Becky would never lack a warm plate of food or good education. Yet, when Becky turned 18 and the news of her pregnancy fell upon the house like a heavy storm, her mother's heart cracked with disappointment. However, a mother's love, though tested, remains unwavering. She wiped her tears, folded away her pride, and chose to stand by her daughter. When Becky's son was born, her mother doubled her hours at work, her hands blistering, her back aching, all so that Becky and her baby could have bread on the table. But fate, unkind and unrelenting, snatched away her job a year later, leaving the home in silence and worry. Becky, now 19, looked into her child's eyes and knew it was her turn to carry the burden. She found work as a housemaid in the neighboring township. The pay was small, barely enough to cover flour and cooking oil, but it was honest work, and she held her head high. Each dawn, she walked long dusty roads, the rising sun pressing heat into her shoulders, the sound of roosters crowing in distant compounds marking her journey. One such morning, a car slowed beside her. Its windows rolled down, and a man inside politely asked for directions. Becky pointed the way, careful not to linger. When he offered her a ride, she smiled politely and declined, for her mother had always warned her about the dangers of strange kindness. 30 minutes later, as fate would have it, the man passed her again on his return, and seeing her still walking, dust clinging to her ankles and sweat dampening her scarf, he stopped once more. This time, he did not only ask questions, he offered her hope. He owned a supermarket in the next town, he said, and though it was an hour away, he was willing to employ her. The words lit a fire inside Becky's chest, and when he handed her his business card, she clutched it as though it were gold. That evening, after her baby had been fed and her weary mother sat resting in their dimly lit room, Becky shared the news. Her mother's eyes, tired but glistening, filled with a silent prayer of gratitude, for perhaps, at last, the tide was turning. Becky's new life in the town was both a blessing and a burden. The supermarket job gave her a steady income, but the endless hours of travel soon carved deep lines of fatigue into her youthful face. After months of enduring the daily back and forth, she made a decision that felt both bold and necessary. She rented a small single room close to her workplace. It wasn't much, just a bed, a wooden chair, and a shaky table, but it was hers. From there, she built a routine. Mondays through Saturdays, she worked diligently, stacking shelves, attending to customers, and earning the respect of her employer. Saturdays after work, she would board a bus back to the village, carrying a small package for her mother and baby, before returning to town at dawn on Mondays. For a while, life seemed to find its rhythm, and Becky felt a quiet pride that her sacrifices were paying off. But one evening, after she returned from work, she scrolled through her phone and stumbled upon pictures of girls from her village who had become sensations on social media. They posed in glittering outfits, vacationing in places Becky only saw in movies, with followers applauding their every move. A sharp pang of envy pierced her chest. Why not me? She thought, her heart thudding with restless desires. She imagined her name glowing in the spotlight, Imagine walking through her village as a center of admiration. That night, Becky planted a seed in her heart, a seed that would soon grow into an obsession. It began innocently enough. She started buying small luxuries, a new scarf here, a shiny pair of earrings there, and posting carefully curated pictures. The likes trickled in, enough to feed her hunger of validation. But Becky was not content. She wanted to shine brighter, to appear untouchable, to become the girl whose life others envied. Soon, her visits home grew fewer as she began pouring her paycheck into flashy clothes, polished hairstyles, and high-heel shoes that announced her arrival before she even spoke. The supermarket worker by day transformed into a socialite by night, attending the town's most glamorous parties as though she had been born for them. Her secret weapon was her cunning. Becky purchased expensive dresses and shoes from boutiques, wore them once, and carefully returned them the next day, claiming they didn't suit her. She was meticulous, removing tags before wearing them and reattaching them with the precision of a seamstress, gliding through parties without ever stepping in dirt that might stain the borrowed luxury. On Instagram, she blossomed into an overnight baddie, her pictures dripping with elegance, each post gathering whispers and admiration. To the world, she was living the dream. Only Becky knew that the dream was stitched together with returns and receipts. But for now, her deception worked, and in the mirror of her phone screen, Becky saw not a struggling young mother, but a rising star. Rhea was everything Becky wasn't anymore. Soft-spoken, humble, and kind without needing to be noticed. They met during a slow afternoon at the supermarket, where Becky's sharp tongue and easy confidence quickly drew the shy newcomer out of her shell. Rhea was grateful for the company. She was new to town and barely knew anyone. Becky, on the other hand, liked the way Rhea looked at her, with admiration, even awe. One evening after work, Rhea turned to Becky with a hopeful smile. "Would you like to come over for dinner?" she asked. "My aunt is away and I could use the company." Becky hesitated for a moment, but agreed, curious about this mysterious aunt who had arranged Rhea's job before leaving on vacation. When they reached the house, Becky's eyes widened in astonishment. The building stood proud and quiet, its cream walls glowing under the sunlight, surrounded by manicured lawn and heavy wooden doors. "Your aunt must be rich," Becky whispered, unable to hide her envy. Inside, the house smelled of vanilla candles and polished wood. Becky's eyes darted from one luxury to another. Glass chandelier, design furniture, framed art. Rhea, unaware of the hunger in Becky's gaze, happily showed her around. "You can look around, but please, don't go into my aunt's room," she said softly. Becky nodded, but curiosity, that old whisper sin, began to stir inside her chest. When Rhea excused herself to use the bathroom, Becky's pulse quickened. Every step toward the forbidden door felt like a test she already knew she'd fail. She pushed it open quietly, her eyes widening as the room revealed itself. Elegant, spotless, glowing with wealth. The scent of perfume lingered in the air. Dresses hung neatly in rows. Handbags sat on glass shelves. And on a chair by the window lay an outfit so stunning it seemed to shimmer under the dim light. Becky's breath caught in her throat. It was the kind of outfit she had always dreamed of. Luxurious, commanding, perfect for her next weekend outing. She glanced around, her heart pounding. The voice of reason whispered that this was wrong, that Rhea trusted her. But another voice, louder, said, "It's only one night. You'll return it." Without another thought, she folded the outfit carefully, slid it into her bag, and closed the door just before Rhea's footstep echoed down the hallway. When the girl reappeared, Becky was smiling innocently, pretending to scroll through her phone. They shared dinner and laughter, but Becky's mind was elsewhere. On the weight of the dress in her bag, on the dangerous thrill rising in her chest. That weekend, Becky wore the stolen outfit to a social event in the city, and for the first time in a long while, she felt seen again. Heads turned, compliments rained, and her followers online went wild over her photos. A queen, they called her. The praise was intoxicating. For a few fleeting days, Becky convinced herself it was harmless. Just borrowing, nothing more. But guilt has a way of clinging to silence. On Monday, she told Rhea she accidentally dropped her wallet at the house and needed to retrieve it. What Rhea didn't know was that Becky had deliberately slipped the wallet under the basin cupboard in the bathroom during her first visit, planting her excuse in advance. After work, they went back to the house. True enough, the wallet lay right where Becky had left it. Relief washed over her. Her lie was perfect, her plan untraceable. She lingered, chatting idly, waiting for a chance to return the outfit without suspicion. When Rhea excused herself to make tea, Becky seized the moment. She tiptoed down the hallway, heart pounding, and entered the aunt's room. Everything was just as she had left it. She carefully placed the dress back on the chair by the window and adjusted it to look untouched. Just as she was about to leave, she heard footsteps approaching. Panic surged through her. Thinking quickly, Becky grabbed the fancy pillow from the bed and pretended she had come in looking for a place to sit. Rhea appeared in the doorway, holding 2 steaming mugs. "I thought I told you not to come in here," she said, her voice gentle but firm. Becky forced a laugh. "I know, I'm sorry. I was just curious. This room is so beautiful." Rhea didn't seem angry, but her eyes lingered on Becky for a moment longer than usual. They returned to the living room, and Becky tried to steer the conversation back to lighter topics. She felt a mix of relief and guilt. Relief that she had returned the outfit without being caught, and guilt for betraying Rhea's trust. As the evening wore on, Becky promised herself she wouldn't do anything like that again. But deep down, she knew the thrill of it all was hard to resist. The house, the secrets, the temptation. It was all too intoxicating. The evening had settled into its usual calm as Becky strolled back from work, the streets humming with a chatter of vendors shutting down their stalls and the soft glow of lanterns flickering against the night sky. Hunger gnawed at her belly, and though her funds were tight, she decided to stop at a local restaurant not far from her rented room. She ordered a plate of steaming food to go, humming to herself as she imagined the comfort of eating after a long day. Back in her small room, Becky unwrapped the styrofoam container, the rich aroma filling the air, and perched on her thin mattress, ready to eat. But just as she lifted her first spoonful, her eyes caught sight of a cockroach boldly strolling across the floor, as if mocking her. Disgusted twisted her face, but before fear could settle, an idea, sharp and mischievous, flashed across her mind. She raised her shoe high, and with one swift smack, the insect lay still. She took a few spoonfuls of the food, and then, without hesitation, Becky scooped up the dead roach and dropped it into her food, her lips curving into a sly smile. She shut the container and stormed back to the restaurant, her steps purposeful, rehearsing her fury. The manager, a weary man with a gentle voice, was taken aback when Becky burst into the restaurant, her voice cutting through the air like a whip. "What sort of nonsense is this?" she bellowed, slamming the container on the counter. "I've been eating here for months, and now I discovered you people put cockroaches in your food?" The other diners froze, eyes widening in horror, whispers circling like wildfire. The manager hurried forward, beads of sweat forming on his brow, and opened the container, only to recoil at the sight of the dead cockroach nestled in the food. "Madame, please lower your voice," he pleaded. "This has never happened here before. Allow me to give you another plate from a fresh pot." Becky scoffed, her arms folded across her chest, her voice rising with manufactured outrage. "Are you mad? You give me cockroach today. Will you give me a rat tomorrow? Return my money so I can eat elsewhere." Her stomach growled in protest, but she didn't falter. holding her ground until the manager, desperate to calm the scene, refunded her and added another meal free of charge. With victory gleaming in her eyes, Becky left with her refund and food, returning to her room where she ate with satisfaction, stretched on her thin mattress, and smiled in triumph at her cleverness. Becky's life had become a strange theater where she played the leading role in a story she knew wasn't hers. By day, she stacked shelves, her hands dry from cartons and dust, her back aching from hours of labor. But when the sun fell, she became a shining star on social media, her curated images feeding the illusion of wealth and elegance. Her followers multiplied daily. Yet, the sponsors she craved did not come knocking, and that stung her pride. Frustration brewed like a storm in her chest. She considered vlogging, but her one-room home was too bare, too shameful, too real. She refused to let the world see her cracked walls, her mattress on the floor, or the lonely corner where her son's photo sat. The night was her ally, cloaking her in borrowed outfits as she dazzled. It was during one of those glamorous nights that Paul appeared, a tall, handsome stranger whose charm melted her defenses. Their relationship blossomed quickly, fueled by secrecy and illusion. Since he wasn't local, she felt safe. He would never stumble upon her real life. Whenever Paul dropped her home from a party, she guided him to Rhea's compound, claiming it belonged to her relatives, slipped into the shadow, and waited until his car disappeared before sprinting like a hunted deer back to her shabby room. Paul adored her, and when her birthday came around, he promised to spoil her. Becky's heart swelled as he whisked her away to a five-star hotel, the kind of place she had only ever admired in magazines. For an entire weekend, she was a princess, unwrapping gifts while Paul captured every moment on camera. Becky laughed freely, savoring the champagne, the luxury bed, the glittering chandeliers overhead. Each photo and video was destined for her followers, a perfect stage to showcase her success. For once, she didn't need to pretend. Paul's love, the lavish setting, and the gifts were real. Yet, even as she glowed, her mind spun with calculation. The outfits she wore that weekend had been fake purchased, carefully planned with the intention of being returned once the weekend ended. On Monday, reality snapped back like a whip. During her lunch break, she hurried from store to store, sliding bags across counters, rehearsing her excuses. Each refund was money she desperately needed, not just to cover her own upkeep, but to send something home to her mother and son. Everything went smoothly until the final store where her luck betrayed her. The cashier's smile was stiff as she informed Becky of a new policy: no refunds for her. Becky's chest tightened, fury rising as the woman calmly explained that they are aware of her scheme of wearing items and returning them. Becky's voice thundered across the store, demanding to speak to the manager. The woman, unfazed, replied, "I am the manager." The instruction came from the owner. Becky's anger sharpened. "Then, call the owner," she hissed, her words cutting through the air. "What is she afraid of? Let her come out and face me." The manager sighed, correcting her with icy calm. "The owner is—" "I don't care," Becky interrupted before she could finish her statement. "You're wasting your time anyway," the manager said before walking away. Becky's pride wouldn't let go. As she scrolled through Instagram on her phone, trying to steady herself, a familiar voice drifted from behind the counter. "What seems to be the problem here?" Becky lifted her gaze, her world collapsing in an instant. Paul, her Paul, standing there, not as her lover, but as the owner of the store. Her blood ran cold, her legs trembling. Without a word, Becky grabbed the bag of items and fled, shame burning her throat. Paul's stunned face followed her exit, confusion laced with betrayal. What Becky didn't know was that he owned not just this store, but many of the shops she had been exploiting. Her secret life had been exposed. To make matters worse, A group of young girls had recorded the entire scene and uploaded it online with the cruel caption, "Borrow it to fake it." Within hours, Becky's carefully crafted world began unraveling. She switched off her phone, packed her little bag, and vanished back to the village, abandoning her job and the life she had built in the city. The bus ride back to the village felt like a punishment carved into time itself. Becky sat by the window, her phone switched off, her heart thudding as if it wanted to leap out of her chest. The humiliation replayed in her mind like a song on repeat. Paul's stunned eyes, the mocking laughter of strangers, the cold words of the manager. The video was spreading across social media like wildfire. She could feel it in her bones. By the time she reached the village, night had already draped itself across the sky. Becky tiptoed into her mother's small home, her son fast asleep on a woven mat, his chest rising and falling in innocence. For a moment, she wanted to collapse beside him and let the world melt away. But her mother's sharp eye caught her in the doorway. "What have you done, Becky?" her mother asked quietly, her tone heavy with a mix of worry and weariness. Becky's lips trembled, but no words came. She lowered her gaze, clutching her small bag like a shield. The silence between them stretched, filled only by the crackle of the small cooking fire. And in the silence, Becky felt the weight of her lies pressed down harder than ever. Morning light did not bring peace. Word had already reached the village before Becky could even step outside. Neighbors whispered, children giggled, and women shook their heads knowingly as they watched her from afar. The video titled, "Borrowed It to Fake It," had traveled faster than Becky could hide, shared in group chats, replayed at market stalls, and laughed over by villagers who once admired her. "So this is what she was doing in town?" One woman sneered at the roadside, pretending to be a queen while leaving her mother to struggle. Becky's mother, though pained by the gossip, held her dignity. She did not join the whispers. Instead, she faced her daughter squarely at home. "Child," she said, her voice low but firm, "the village may laugh today, but laughter fades. What remains is the truth of who you are. Running from shame will not wash it away. You must face it, and you must change." Becky swallowed hard, her pride colliding with the truth of her mother's words. She wanted to scream, to cry, to vanish. But deep down, she knew her mother was right. The lie had crumbled, and there was nowhere left to hide. Days passed like this, with Becky hiding indoors, peeking through windows as gossip swirled outside. The humiliation gnawed at her, yet so did hunger and the sight of her son's needs. She had abandoned her job, her paycheck, her one source of income. Pride was a heavy stone, but survival was heavier still. One afternoon, her mother returned from the market with a bag of cassava, her hands rough and tired. She set it down and looked at Becky, her eyes softer this time. "You cannot eat followers, Becky. You cannot feed a child with fake shoes and borrowed dresses. You must learn that life is not lived for the applause of strangers, but for the people who love you in truth." The words pierced Becky's heart, dismantling the last of her defenses. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she clutched her mother's hands, ashamed yet strangely relieved. For the first time in months, she allowed herself to feel small, to admit she was lost. Weeks passed and Becky sent word to the town, humbly asking for her job at the supermarket back. The owner, impressed by her past diligence, welcomed her again. Becky worked harder than before, this time without pretenses, saving what little she could. One afternoon, as she arranged tins on the shelf, a familiar voice called her name. She turned, heart thudding. It was Paul. His eyes searched hers, not with anger, but with disappointment mingled with care. For a moment, Becky froze, then spoke from the depths of her humility. She confessed everything: the lies, the fake life, the fear of being ordinary. Tears welled in her eyes as she whispered, I was lost, but I want to be better. Paul studied her, then sighed deeply, the hardness in his face easing. Becky, he said, all I ever wanted was the real you. And for the first time, Becky chose honesty over illusion, ready to rebuild her life with truth as her foundation. Moral lesson, no matter how bright the illusion, truth will always outshine the lie. When we build our worth on approval of others, we lose sight of who we truly are. Real beauty and success are not found in borrowed things or fake applause, but in honesty, humility, and the courage to start again after we've fallen. Remember, don't lose your soul trying to impress the world. Hey everyone, I just want to say thanks to all my regular viewers and returning subscribers. Every time you come back to watch another story, you remind me why I keep creating. God bless every one of you abundantly. If you've been watching for a while, drop a heart in the comments so that I can recognize my returning viewers and tell me where you're watching from. Your presence here truly keeps the stories alive. Thank you once more, and I'll see you on the next one. Be blessed.
Jamaican storyteller, storyteller, and the stories them lit. And there's always a twist, African, Jamaican, and Caribbean tales. Morals, lessons, and they never fail. I know this might sound crazy, tales by Shanse is my baby. They say the thing them turn up, you have to learn, subscribe.